Squad version 2.12 is finally here. It's been a while since we've spoken about Squad because due to the issues they're having with technical debt, the game hasn't had a lot of updates in terms of content or quality of life. This update today is a very huge improvement to the quality of life of Squad and generally makes the game far more readable, more functional, and way more balanced than ever before. There are a lot of really key changes as well as some lighting updates, so let's dive straight on in and we're going to be covering all of the important points, and if you want to read the full release notes, there's a link in the description below. To start with, the shadow system has been completely overhauled, meaning that there are now been no competitive advantages to running on low shadows. So for example, on Talil, shadows now render out to 1 kilometer on all graphical settings. This is a really impressive change and something that a lot of hardcore shooters tend to get wrong. Now it's a much more even playing field, whether you're on low or on ultra. The game has also updated its lighting system to make shadows, lighting, and brightness generally far more dynamic and match the landscape much more. This includes skyboxes, foliage, hard objects, terrain out to 8 kilometers. And if you've ever felt like you've been shot from the middle of nowhere in Squad, not only does this general lighting change help that situation, but this next change is also really substantial, and that is the Muzzle Flash. If you've ever played Squad and it's incredibly unclear where you're being shot from except for some audio, that's finally changed. Muzzle Flashes are now super obvious in the game and add a really good layer of readability. At the moment, I'd say they're a little bit too intense, they maybe need to be scaled back about 10%, but the effect is fantastic. It's really helpful, and for once you can finally pick out active shooters who are in your proximity rather than just having to rely on audio and the suppression mechanic. That feeling of randomly being shot from nowhere after walking for a really long time is drastically reduced with this change, and it does make you think a little bit more about when you're going to shoot versus when you're not going to shoot if you're somebody who is firing, because of course the muzzle flash may give away your location. Tracers also seem to be much better in this update as well, meaning that visually being able to pinpoint enemies is now a really good part of Squad that didn't exist before. If I recall in the update notes, they only had the actual muzzle flashes rendering out to like 50 meters in the past, and that's now been completely changed. You can see somebody a good couple hundred meters away if their muzzle flash is bright enough. Two of the maps, Gordok and Yev, have been completely overhauled in terms of how they look, with a lighting pass and a couple of other changes including tessellation, and tessellation now applies to Anvil, Gordok, Manic, Mesita, and Yev. There's lots more graphical options in this update this time around, so if you find yourself on a high, medium, or low-end system, there's more to play with on this front and more things to customize. Some of the gameplay you're seeing today is from Gordok, which is the new version, and I must say it is a substantial upgrade over the previous version of this map. It looks better, it looks cleaner, looks more modern. The updated map is also very handy to have, as you can see the tree lines and stuff. Overall, I would say I'm really impressed with it. It kind of breathes life into otherwise fairly barren feeling maps. I haven't played Yev yet, but Gordok especially felt really impressive and it felt more like a dynamic map. Now with all of these lighting, graphics, and shadow changes, there has been a little bit of questions around performance, and it seems to vary quite drastically from system to system. Me personally, yes, I know I'm on a high-end system using a 3080, a 5950X, so on and so forth, but I've only really seen a maybe 5% dip in frame rate, if that. Otherwise it seems to be very solid considering the updates and changes. The only exception to that seems to be the Fallujah map, which before I was getting like 90 frames, now I'm getting more like 55, 60, so quite a substantial drop on that map, and hopefully we see some optimization over time. Your mileage may vary though, and there does seem to be a fairly decent amount of people complaining about performance in 2.12. Generally speaking, whenever I install a major Squad update, I flat out uninstall the game, I update my graphics drivers and give them a clean installation, and I tend to just sort of clear any kind of backlog or old files within Squad and just give it a full reset. The update should do that by itself, but as a sort of old school Squad player, I'm just used to that process and it's what I've always done, and I haven't really personally seen any huge performance impacts. I was playing with a couple of people last night recording this footage, Neither of them saw performance impacts either, though again, they were on slightly more medium to high-end systems, so if you're sort of edging around the minimum spec line, you may see a bit of a performance hit with this update. Squad is a very CPU-intensive game, so if you have a CPU which isn't the strongest in the world, then you might run into some problems with this update, but the balancing that it manages to achieve with this update, the improvements to shadows and muzzle flashes, and general render distances, make the game a better experience. So it may be upgrade season, and it may be optimization season for a little while for Squad. I have seen some people who are on clearly powerful enough systems seeing pretty bad performance impacts, and there seems to be something bugging out in that area. So if you get any low FPS and you're on a good system already, do as much as you can, but there is a chance that there are some things that aren't quite working as intended within this update. Another fairly substantial update is that grass and foliage rendering on some of the reworked maps now happens much better at distance. So using shadowy areas and foliage areas as cover is a much more viable option since this update. The next substantial change is that the actual capture flags now scale to the number of players on the objective. So if a capture flag is overrun by a large number of enemies, it will get captured much quicker than it would be in the past. This should lead to more double neutrals and much closer endgame scenarios, which is really cool to see. There is now a buddy boost system in the game, allowing you to jump on the back of a friendly player in order to vault to higher objects. This will help you get over walls and get onto rooftops that you previously couldn't get on before, and is a really cool feature to have. There are now a few more visual effects and audio effects for different types of terrain, as well as helicopters, landmines, IED explosions, and demo charges, and the game, generally speaking, has much more of a substantial fleshed out feel. Helicopter dust-offs, for example, look better, there are more footsteps for different types of flooring like concrete and gravel, and even the jostling of a weapon as you're running with it has been updated in the game. The Ragdoll system in the game has also been greatly improved, meaning that when players are killed, the Ragdolls should be more realistic now, and if somebody gets dropped in front of you, they should drop if they're running in a certain direction, as you would expect them to in real life. The Ragdoll system looks much better now, especially when players are falling out of vehicles, being blown up, or just generally getting shot, and it did look pretty good from what I've seen so far, so that's a nice change to have. A bunch more layers have also been added to the game as well. There are now way more options for different random area assault layers and all kinds of options available for a few of the maps now, which is really nice to see. Overall, this was a really solid update, and the actual list of all the things that were fixed and changed is really extensive, so I've only really given you guys the highlights here. There are way more. Like I said, feel free to check out the actual link in the description. There's a lot going on with this update. So far, I'm really impressed with it. The general feel of the game is better, it's more readable, it feels like I'm dying less randomly, and it feels like I'm actually seeing more of the conflict happening in front of me. And that's a really substantial change to Squad, and makes the game feel better. In other hardcore shooters like Hell Let Loose, it seems to be a lot easier to identify where the conflict is happening, and that's always something that Squad has only really relied on its really good audio system before, and never really had the visual system to back it up. With the combinations of shadows, foliage, and muzzle flashes, the game is substantially more readable, and overall the quality just seems to be a little bit more elevated from what we've seen in the past. From the 4 or 5 hours I played last night and the multiple games we had with a couple of people online just randomly, it felt like a better experience. It really did. The infantry gameplay in particular felt far more satisfying than anything I'd experienced in Squad before, and such a simple change like more visual muzzle flashes makes a really astounding difference to a game like Squad. Now, there are still lots of question marks around performance, especially for people on lower end systems, and I think that's something that does need to be addressed. I do love this update. I think personally this update for me is a solid 10 out of 10, but performance is always key in any given shooter. And the Steam hardware survey tells us that not a lot of people are running on powerful systems, so the more optimized this can get, the better. Now, if you are on a high-end system and you're noticing things not working properly, definitely go to the support page online, or definitely go to the support on Discord. Try a couple of uninstalls, try uninstalling graphics drivers, try uninstalling the game itself. Getting rid of any hardware caches as well could make a substantial difference, and you may see your performance return. I understand that isn't the most ideal setup for a general game like Squad, but it seems to be that most people, I would say, on medium to high-end systems seem to be totally fine, but some people just seem to be having their performance, cut by a third or cut by a half for no apparent reason. So it's definitely something to take a look at, and if you have noticed that performance impact and you are on a good system, that shouldn't be the case, so there should be something a little bit messed up or going on there. If you're on a lower end system, it's going to take a little while for this update to be optimized. I don't really think you're going to get much out of Squad at the moment, but generally speaking, Squad has always been a CPU intensive game, so keep an eye on that. If you have the option to upgrade from maybe, I don't know, a Ryzen 1000 or an i3 or an i5 to something a little more beefier with a higher clock speed, that should help you quite a lot. There are a few other things you can do as well, like making sure XMP or DOCP is enabled on your RAM. Enabling the ultimate performance mode on Windows 10 or 11 also helps quite substantially. And there are plenty of guides online on how you can squeeze more performance out of your system, but again, Squad is primarily a CPU-bound game. So folks, that's about it for this update. I honestly think it's been really incredible and the game feels so much better to me already. That's something I'm very excited about. Hopefully we see the issues regarding optimization solved for people on lower end systems. I do understand that, not everybody has the money to go and throw, lots of cash at a new PC or a new laptop. And more importantly, with the current hardware availability and with graphics cards being so scarce and RAM shortages and SSD shortages, it's very, very difficult to sort of justify spending extra cash on systems that you can't even get right now. I'll also leave a link in the description below to Chill Blast, who are my PC sponsors. If you are looking to upgrade, pre-builts are definitely the way to go right now with hardware shortages, and these guys do some really good stuff. I really hope everybody gets to enjoy this update for all of the good things that it offers to the game in the not too distant future, and that optimization doesn't become a forefront focus of Squad again. Hopefully it's something really stupid like a memory leak, or something really stupid like something rendering in 100 times when it should only render in once. We'll have to wait and see, and hopefully we get some responses on that soon. As always folks, thank you for watching. I'll catch you again in the next video. Feel free to leave a like, subscribe, we're on the road to 100k, and I'll see you in the next one.